Alrighty. So I think we'll go ahead and start. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to join us for the Federation of Dharma School Teachers League Buddhist Education Committee presentation of, so you're a new Dharma School teacher. Now what? So Reverend Adams, are you able to, can you hear me? Okay, can you unmute? I don't know where you are.
Yes, I can hear you.
Would you mind leading us in opening Gasho, please?
I would be honored to. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Namo.
Thank you very much, Sensei. So with regards to today's program, whether you are truly a new to teaching, a seasoned Dharma school teacher, or even an educator by career, we hope to present some valuable ideas for the classroom and the Jodo Shinshu mind. I got to tell you, this FDSTL committee is so dedicated to helping all our Dharma school teachers. They're experienced, knowledgeable, and earnestly tuned into helping all Dharma schools thrive. If you have any suggestions or desires for topics for any future webinars, please place it in the chat or email me, and I'll put my email in there at your leisure. We will begin our program with a welcome from our FDSTL president, Koichi Sayano, who has been very active and devoted to a member of the FDSTL cabinet for many years. We truly appreciate Koichi's dedication to the FDSTL and BCA as well. Koichi? Where'd you go? There he is. Koichi, no audio, can't hear you.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, yeah, thank you, and thank you for attending today's workshop. The Education Committee has been working very hard over the last several months to put this workshop together. This is actually something that I was when I was vice president, I was started working on it, but we never were able to put it together until now. And this is an introductory Jodo Shinshu workshop, and then also the talk is based on the talk that Rev Adams gave pre-pandemic when they had the Temple Leader Seminar at the Jodo Shinshu Center. So this is a timely topic, as you know. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so next year is actually this first part of a joint Shinran Shonin's 850th, and also the 800th anniversary of Jodo Shinshu teachings. So it is fitting that we re-engage in studying and going back to our basic roots of Jodo Shinshu. Coincidentally, the observance of Shinran Shonin's 850th next year does fall on a Sunday. It's May 21st. So it is something that I'd like to see the Dharma schools certainly make a redoubled effort to go back and learn about and present projects on Shinran Shonin's life. So with that, first we'll have Stacy Uyeda present some lesson, make a presentation on lesson materials, and then for the second part will be Reverend Adams. So again, I'd like to thank all the participants, and we'll proceed with our program. Okay, Darlene.
Perfect, thank you, Koichi. So to begin our presentations, it's my honor to introduce Stacy Uyeda from the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, Dharma School, who she's going to be sharing resources for teaching. I have to tell you, Stacy is absolutely wonderful. To provide you background, she has been an East Bay Middle School English and History teacher for nearly 30 years. She not only teaches, but mentors her fellow teachers and serves as a consultant for the Bay Area Writing Project at UC Berkeley. With boundless energy, Stacy dedicates her summers to teaching the Daruma no Gakko Nikkei cultural program for primary grades. Like Stacy, I too grew up at the San Jose Betsuin programs, for which we both have fond memories. Stacy and her family joined the Berkeley Buddhist Temple about 11 years ago, and she has served as their Dharma School superintendent for 10 years. She has been a huge asset to our committee as we tried to quickly share information on how to keep the Dharma schools engaged during the pandemic. Not only is she presenting, but hopes to learn from all of you amazing Dharma School teachers here today. So Stacy.
Thank you so much, Darlene. That was such a nice introduction. Appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you being here. Just before I do introductions, I want to do an overview. So we'll do kind of some introductions to get to know each other a little bit. Then I want to actually address the questions that were submitted. And to do that first, I don't want to run out of time. And then after that, I'm going to divide the rest of the time into talking a little bit about themes, possible themes and resources. And then as kind of a bridge to Reverend Adams, I'm going to use one lesson example and kind of show you the kind of teacher preparation side to it, and then let Reverend Adams really help shine the light of the Dharma on it and you know, illuminate some of the lessons that we can gain from it. So that's it. So I'm going to introduce myself. Yeah, my name is Stacy Uyeda. I use she, her pronouns. I do live in the East Bay area, and I want to acknowledge that I am living on the borrowed land of the Lishan Ohlone. I am just really happy to be here. Behind me, this screenshot is actually during the summer, the Bay District Junior YBA went to Ocean Beach and cleaned up the beach. So those are junior YBA students and some parent advisors you see behind me. Okay, so I'd like to get to know all of you a little bit. And so when we're on Zoom, one way to do that is with the chat. And if you do end up doing this with your classrooms, your Dharma School classes, the chat can be really helpful. You know, so many students are very familiar with how to use it. So I'm just going to ask you two questions. So the first question that I'd like you to put in the chat, if possible, and if you don't know how to use the chat, that's totally fine. You could unmute yourself and just say it. But the question I'd like you to put in the chat, or your response, is to tell me who your favorite teacher was or is. You know, like if you just think back and like name one of your favorite teachers, right? And so I'll do mine as an example. Mr. Darren, he was actually my kindergarten, my first, and my fifth grade teacher. So I'd love for you to put, you could put the person's name, the teacher's name, and you could even tell us what grade or when that teacher taught you. That would be great. So go ahead and start populating that now. Thanks, Moss, for starting us. Mr. Friesen. I'm so curious to know what Mr. Friesen taught. Advisors. Ooh, I see a middle school English teacher, a fourth grade teacher, someone's high school Japanese teacher, a San Jose Betsuin teacher, band, lots of fourth grade, very interesting. Mr. Bragg, what a great teacher name. Taught many grades and subjects. Oh. High school science, second grade teacher, middle school PE, biology, a hospital occupations teacher. That is really interesting and cool. Typing teacher. I took typing. Oh, shorthand. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Wonderful. Isn't it amazing? And so many of you remember the person's first name, and it's just so cool. Marching band, Mrs. Dragon. That's a cool name. Oh my goodness. Oh, wonderful. Mrs. Woods from third grade, Ms. Hale from English in high school, world history. So my purpose in this is to help us, you know, really recall that great teacher And I know that I'm not going to do total justice to the quotation, but it is true that what our students remember is less what they learned, right? But how that classroom and how that teacher made us feel, right? And so that's a really, really important thing. And I think that that's reflected in the teachers that you're remembering, is again, how they made you feel in that classroom. And so the second thing I'd like you to put in the chat is I'd like you to think for a moment and put in 3 words that you would like your Dharma School teacher, 3 words that you would like your Dharma School students to feel when they're in your Dharma School classroom, right? So what are 3 things you'd like them to feel? So I'll go first here, and I'll put in an example. I would say my 3 things would be, I want them to feel brave, and curious and joyful, right? So if you could please join us in the chat this way now. So now we're kind of thinking, the first question was thinking more as, a student, who are those teachers that inspired us or made us feel good, confident, healthy, joyful, accomplished, and so forth. And then turn it around. And as a teacher, as a Dharma School teacher, what do we want our students to feel? Beautiful. I see acknowledged, seen, engaged, inspired, open-minded, trusted, proud, confident, welcomed, comfortable, curious, happy, inspired, kind, healthy, welcomed, open, grateful, compassionate, beautiful, accepted, respected, connected. It's great. It's wonderful. Okay, I feel like our job's done. I think the workshop's done. Look at this. This is amazing. This is what we want. So this is wonderful. Thank you for participating. And just to try to keep those feelings in mind as we kind of tackle these bigger questions about how to organize our classrooms and inspire our students, and mix in what one person asked, like how to mix learning in with fun, right? Ooh, thank you, Anne. Someone said, Anne said, welcomed, kind human. Okay, so as I said, I wanted to address some of the main questions. And so one of the main questions was, how might our Dharma School do a hybrid format? Okay, so I am going to answer this one because I feel like I have kind of the easiest answer for this one. I really, as someone who taught for more than a year doing a hybrid format in my 8th grade public school classroom, I feel that it's tends to be a disservice to both the teachers and the students. It's not easy to do. Everybody feels slightly dissatisfied, if not a lot dissatisfied. So it's really, really hard. I think that an alternative or a different kind of hybrid format, rather than having one teacher have to help students who are in person and then also look at a little screen and help somebody who's at home, would be to have a single teacher take charge of online learning, and maybe prepare a few classes or lessons that could be done with students who whose families have chosen or feel safer staying home, or to rotate the responsibility for who does that, or to just alternate in-person classes and online classes. So, for instance, this year at Berkeley Buddhist Temple, at least for the first half of the year, what we're going to do is have 3 Sundays a month be in person, and then 1 Sunday a month we will do on Zoom, just to help bring in and welcome in the couple of families who joined us from from geographically too far away to actually be in person. So that's my response to that. Another question was, how do we teach multiple grade level classrooms? And I think that there are a couple of questions like this. Like first, I noticed that someone is challenged with teaching K through 3, and absolutely, it is challenging. I think the great thing though is that it's also a wonderful opportunity. So I would suggest that, you have an opportunity to have the older students model to the younger students. You can have the younger students sort of be that their presence in itself kind of helps bring a lot of joy. They tend to, just be so lively and sweet, and it's very fun to have their presence. In terms of preparing your classroom lessons, when you have multiple grade levels, you might think of how the younger grades just need a little bit more prep in their materials. If you're, for instance, doing a craft, the younger ones might need everything done a few steps in, rather than starting from the first step of whatever you're doing. Kind of think of it as like, let's say you're teaching origami, you actually do the first couple of folds for them so that they are in it faster. And then I think it's just always an opportunity when you have a multi-grade class, you still can have moments where you divide into smaller groups, particularly if you've got maybe perhaps an adult volunteer or, someone's college age son or daughter or non-binary child is home from college, and you can have that person help with a smaller group or something like that. Another person asked, how can Dharma School teachers tell if their curriculum is appropriate and understood? And I just feel like Dharma School teachers, we should release ourselves from feeling like we need to be what so-called sage on the stage. I don't think we have to feel that way. I certainly feel very bombu. I feel very like a beginner in everything. And instead, you're more what teachers now kind of call a guide on the side. You try to find resources for students. You try to, expose them to a lot of great stories and projects that can help them discover what you're hoping you want them to be learning. It's always okay, I feel, to be able to say, so-and-so, that is a great question. I will research it and get back to you, that you don't have to feel frozen or like a deer in the headlights, like, I don't know the answer to that question. It's just okay not to know, and to say like, let's figure that out or discover that together. Kind of related, it's our Dharma School classrooms also, you don't have to feel so like, it doesn't have to be so mysterious whether or not they're understanding things, because that was another question. Like, how can we tell if they're understanding it? You can ask for feedback. There's a couple of quick, easy ways that take no technology, or anything like that. You can say, oh my gosh, after all this that we just talked about, can you give me a thumbs up or a sideways or a thumbs down about how much you understood of that? And they will be very honest. You could give them a little piece of paper and at the very end say, hey, this is what teachers today call an exit ticket, EXIT, an exit ticket. But you can say, hey, on your way out, can you just tell me, like, what's one thing that you really learned today? Right? That's one way to see, did anybody, absorb what we were doing? You also, if you want it to feel a little bit more anonymous, you could have a box in your classroom and let the students ask questions or put comments in the box. That's another way to get good feedback. Let's see. Another question was, any tips on engaging drop-ins and new families to increase interest and probability of their return? Which is, I could hear at the beginning, everyone kind of, joking that that's something we're all experiencing, is how to, keep new families to keep coming. I know Berkeley's having the same challenge. And I think that Moss, some of you came early enough, you were hearing how San Jose was having this coffee chat time. I think that's the best answer, is you have to kind of provide opportunities for the family to get to the families to get to know each other, and to interact, especially cohorts, you know, like if you can find a family that has about the same age children and you can have them meet and interact, you know, it's a lot more likely that both the child and the parents are going to feel like coming back. Another person asked, what about recruitment of new teachers from new members who are not, quote, heritage members of our temple? Yeah, Berkeley's had some wonderful opportunities with that. We've recruited new ministers, actually, even from our new members who are not heritage members. But the way that I think we did that is for Dharma School is to ask them if they want to volunteer in the class, you know, and, you know, particularly because we all, I know, are instituting youth protection policies. This would be a supervised thing. Like, you know, you actually ask someone to just come and volunteer, and you're there too. And you know, can help them kind of develop a little something, a small lesson or something they're interested in, or they can just read a story to the kids and you can kind of see how that chemistry goes. I heard at the beginning of this workshop, someone was mentioning, I think it was Norman from San Diego, how there are several temple members who help translate things into languages other than English, which is wonderful. And that's like another way to kind of help people from kind of outside the, quote, heritage community to do things like, you know, can you help us like translate this into another language? Can you, you know, bring on those wonderful skills? Let's see. There, I see another question about how to mix in learning and having fun. So now I'll talk a little bit about lesson planning, and then I'm going to show you my resource that I've made for you. So everyone's going to go away with this resource page I've made. But in terms of lesson planning and kind of, you know, thinking about making a successful lesson, there's kind of just two main questions to keep in mind is, what am I asking my students to do, right? What am I asking my Dharma School students to do? And why am I asking my Dharma School students to do that, right? So again, what am I asking the students to do and why am I asking them to do that? And so when you set up your lesson, you should be thinking, you know, what is the teacher doing, right? And why? And then what are the students doing and why, you know, and then after you figure that out, like what materials am I going to need to make that happen? And that's kind of my 20 seconds on, you know, teaching. Of course, teachers, you know, spend years figuring out how to do their lessons in a way that fits them and is effective, but that's kind of a quick and dirty on that. And so I'm going to now share my screen and show you this resource that I've made for you. So everyone is going to have access to this resource that hopefully you can see on your screen that at the top says Teaching Essentials. You are a new Dharma School teacher. Now what? And I have it divided into 4 areas. And I actually would like to start here in the bottom left-hand corner where it says Tried and True Dharma School Themes and Ideas. And I just want to read out the top 12 to 14 of them just to put into the air here. These are, you know, some themes over my years being superintendent, attending lots of Federation Dharma School teacher meetings and so forth. These are some things that Dharma schools often take on as the theme for the year or for the first half of the year or for a month. 3 jewels. 4 Noble Truths, the 6 Paramitas, the 6 Realms of Existence, the Eightfold Noble Path, 10 Major Disciples, golden chain, Shinran Shonin, chanting, compassion, dana, gratitude, symbols and objects in the hondo, and serving our kero, our elders, right? So those are some examples of like what you might use as a theme. And this, if you have any new Dharma school teachers, I do think choosing a theme is extremely helpful. Now, I know that at some Dharma schools, you're very organized and, you have it all set up that, kindergarten through second grade studies these things, and, third grade through fifth grade studies these things. And that's great too, for sure. Absolutely. But if you are feeling like, we want to kind of do a little restart or a reboot, or we want to change it up a little bit, here are some possibilities for themes. So once you have a theme, then you can kind of seek out some resources. So at the top of this handout that you will go away with today, I have some resources. On the left-hand side are some Jodo Shinshu and general Buddhism resources, including just our BCA website that has many, many great resources by clicking on Learn and News and Media. And then we also have an amazing BCA Dharma School website that has a lot of different resources kind of offered to you in different formats. Some curriculum. We have a material archive that has a bunch of classic Dharma School, BCA Dharma School materials that should not be overlooked. We have clip art if you need it. We've got a curriculum guide. We do have a Facebook page for those of you who didn't know that, and then we've just got some amazing experts who belong to our temples, such as Kyo Masuda, who does these wonderful reading video projects or does book talks and makes videos of them. So I'm going to show you a few of those things. And then I also want to show you some general teacher resources. Okay, so I think I'm doing okay on time. So let me do a little run through here. So I talked about themes. Here's an example of when you click on the handout that I give you and you click on Dana, it'll go to this handout that has different types of Dana. And when you look at it this way, you can think to yourself, oh my gosh, I could talk about a different kind of Dana and work with the students on a little project. Every single month could be a different kind of Dana, and there's your year that your lessons are planned in that way that you kind of know what you want to try to do, right? So that's an idea of, again, how to use theme. Here is one of the wonderful web pages that Mas Nishimura helps put all of this together and compile it. This is our BCA Dharma School website. And again, you can see some of the links here. And if you click right here where it says Children Book Video Project, a collection of videos by Kyoko Masuda, it will go to, let's see, a video that looks like this, that you could very easily play for a class, where Kyo is not only introducing the connection to today's world, right? And the theme of, whatever it is, compassion, being inclusive, anti-bias, and then she reads the book and does like a book talk. Some other links that I put here that are on that handout. There's one here with back to school icebreakers, right? Which it's so nice to just kind of have a couple of icebreakers under your belt that you love to do and that you can do. And so this is a website that has a couple of really good ones. Let me go back to the handout again so I can show you where I am now. So I've moved over from the general Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism resources. Now I'm on the right-hand side here. These are more general resources. So community building activities are the icebreakers I just talked about. And then I put a very big list of online learning tools. With a little bit of a caveat that, in no way do I suggest like a Dharma school should do all of these different online learning tools. I think that it really should be more of a middle path on that. You really should find maybe one or two that really fit you and your Dharma School's style, and that might actually be very useful to you. In parentheses, next to each tool is a tiny reminder or hint of what kind of tool it is. So Kahoot, for instance, is very interactive, and gamification is a teacher term that means when you're kind of turning content into something that can be that's more like a game. It tends to really engage the students and makes them very excited, because it often involves, points and scores and a podium and, places like first, second, and third and stuff, which is not particularly Buddhist in my opinion. So again, I feel like you have to do this with a grain of salt when it says gamification. There's puzzle makers. This is great if you're like, I just want to make a simple crossword puzzle, right? Puzzle.org is very helpful. Flipgrid is a really great way. It's a safe for school social media kind of tool where kids can use a phone really easily to record themselves if you wanted to do some kind of project or presentation that way. Okay, so those are all those kinds of tools. So this is an example of Kahoot. This is it's very crowded looking. This is the home page. It's not very helpful to see it this way, but when you go to Discover, and I'm just going to do this in front of you. I'm going to type in Jodo Shinshu. You're going to probably think, oh, nothing's going to come up. This is too kind of mainstream and commercial. But when you do see that there have been Dharma schools, junior YBAs, other groups who have made Kahoots that have several questions. And there's even one I made a while ago. And I was so surprised to see my picture up here. Sample Dharma School Kahoot. And then you can see that I would write a question. And if I do it this way here, you can see you can load in questions and then load in answers, options, and then you make sure you choose the right one. And then the students can play it, right? And what's good about Kahoot is that you can copy or duplicate someone else's. Like for instance, you could start a Kahoot account, duplicate this particular Kahoot, and then edit it and just add more questions, take out the picture because you don't like that one and you want to put in something different. You can make it your own. Okay. Here's another resource that is connected on the right-hand side. This is called Welcoming the Rainbow. It is a wonderful guide to LGBTQIA+ inclusion for Buddhists. It was put together by some folks that may even be part of your Sangha. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful guide to help kind of bring to the surface ways that our temple might not be that welcoming or inclusive, right? That you don't even realize that you are doing. And then suggesting practices that you can do that are more welcoming and inclusive. Okay, and so, Darlene, how am I on time?
I think you're okay because our break is still another about 8 minutes away, but
Okay,
it's 15
perfect.
minutes, so we can go over a little bit if you need.
Okay, thanks very much. So this is the last thing. So I said that I would bring in an actual kind of lesson idea. So Reverend Adams and I both agreed, wouldn't it be great to talk a little bit or focus on the Onaijin and or Obutsudan, and just kind of, use that as an example of ways to introduce, the Dharma to our students. So on the BCA Dharma School website, we have the Fundamentals of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism workbook. And chapter 4 is called the Onaijin and Obutsudan. And when you click on this pop out, right, it'll open up to a larger version of the document that can be printed. And you can see that whoever put this lesson together has, I think, some experience as a teacher and is thinking like, okay, how do I get my students kind of thinking about this theme, about symbols? How can I connect it to some symbols that they probably know about, right? Like what would be a symbol for love? Maybe a heart, a Valentine, that kind of thing, right? And then to get into the actual Dharma School content or the Dharma content, and it's to show us, what an onaijin often looks like and the different parts of it and the basic parts of it, right? And to then there's the practice part, right? What do you have the students do? Well, you could have them actually practice how to do oshoko, right? Properly, right? You could have them draw or construct their own obutsudan, right? You could have them practice the calligraphy, that is at the back there, right? All of those different kinds of things. So you can see this particular activity is just having the students label and put in the right place the layout of the obutsudan. Also on the website is another lesson that's for younger kids, grade 1 through 2, called My First Obutsudan. And it has the basic lessons outline for how to put together, a obutsudan that's kind of basically on some cardboard or some cardstock. And then also on our website is a bit of a more advanced one that is a 5-week project to actually make an obutsudan out of small pieces of wood, and this lesson is recommending kamaboko boards. And, they actually are going to construct it out of wood, which I remember doing when I was young. I mean, I definitely did this project. Now, but 5 weeks, when you look at the suggestion, again, this is your chance to kind of make it your own. It doesn't have to be 5 weeks. You could, have part of it already done, so it doesn't take 5 weeks. You could, alter it in a lot of different ways so that it fits what you and your teachers want to do. And then finally, there are some resources to make the story of the obutsudan come alive. And so again, at the bottom of the handout that I'm going to leave with you today, there is a Dharma message that Reverend Yushi Mukojima actually wrote about the lion that is often on the top of the incense burner, right, in front of the onaijin, and then tells the story of the lion and the peony flower. So there's, that's what we might do. If you get inspired by an idea or a theme, then hopefully you can use some of these resources, right, to kind of bring together the things that will help you put it together in a way that fits, whether or not you're teaching a single grade, a multi-grade, whether you want it to last 1 session or 5 sessions, hopefully there are some things that we can do to help you out here. Okay, so I think that's it. I think I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm wondering if anyone has any immediate questions before we kind of segue after the break to Reverend Adams really doing more of the enlightening, and here's the content, here are the things that you might want to talk about with your students or help show. Any questions?
Stacy, this is Carl.
Yes.
I was wondering how you wanted to share this document.
So I think we should share it twice. I didn't want to share it at the beginning of my talk because, well, honestly, because I know, like, my students, if you click on it, then you're just looking at it and, I've kind of lost you a little bit. So I'm going to share the link now. And then also, hopefully, Carl could help send it out again when you send out the link to the video. Is that okay? Okay,
yes.
Great. All right. So here is the link. Let me copy it. All right. So in the chat, I've put a link Hopefully it should open it, and you'll see the same. It's a two-sided document with all of those resource links on the front, and then the back are some of the bigger questions that I addressed at the beginning.
Works perfect, Stacy. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. And I hope that I helped address some of the big questions that were coming.
I have one question for you though. I don't know if any of this, and I believe, and you guys must can correct me if I'm wrong, those, I'm gonna call them old, but those books that were by grade level, that they had a teacher copy and then you had the student workbook, have those been put on our website? Because if not, Tad Shibata's garage is still full of these books. And we have about a pallet that we have to take out of the Jodo Shinshu Center. So Tad is more than happy to send you however many copies you want of each grade level. He just ships it out. I think Northwest asked for some at one time and he shipped some up there. So if you, I put my email in the chat, I'll put it in again. Just email me how many copies of each. I think it's like nursery, kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's grouped. And then how many you want of each grade level. And then I'll pass it on to Tad, and I'm sure Tad will be happy to ship it to you from his garage. So yeah, here, and then Quichu's got in here. Yeah, he said Reverend Nakata had scanned it onto the website. So it's there, but if you want the hard copies, they're there and they exist. There's no sense wasting them. So if you want the actual hard copy, just let me know. Anyways, and those are wonderful, wonderful resources, Stacy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you everyone for your comments. Darlene, may I ask one question? I see a comment from Rick. Rick, do you mind if I just ask you to clarify a little bit more? Do you mean the ideas like the tools or the themes? Which things?
Stacy, the tools, you know, you presented some great ideas and stuff, but you know, through your experience, have they been successful in the sense of helping you reach the students using that tool to get your point? Or, you know, is there a way that you kind of say, well, this works better than others? And of course, everything is different. So grades and
yeah, I can just very quickly, because I know we're up for a break now, but so Kahoot, I think, is very helpful just because it's so familiar to students and easy to use for adults planning it. Quizzes is like Kahoot. I don't see a big difference that for a Dharma School class, I don't see why it would be that big of a difference, because this is not, you're not grading the students. You don't need to record, you know, change over time and all that kind of stuff. The next two, I think, would be better for the elementary level, you know, whereas Kahoot and Quizzes, good for all grades pretty much. Puzzle Maker is very helpful for anyone who just needs a little help with, I want to make a word search, I want to make a crossword puzzle, I just, you know, I want doing something pretty quick. Padlet is very helpful if you just want, it's like having a digital bulletin board. So instead of putting everyone's work on an actual bulletin board, it's a digital bulletin board. There, you know, there are pluses and minuses to that, but that's what that is. Flipgrid, again, is really good if you want to have every student's little mini video of something, like maybe they're answering a question, you know, or something like that, and you just kind of want it all collected together. Edpuzzle is good if you want to show them a video and have questions. That is probably better for, you know, middle school or high school. Go Noodle is really great for elementary school because it has all of these funny, good dances, you know, if you just need to get them to wiggle it out, and also is good for mindfulness. They do have some mindfulness activities on Go Noodle. And then finally, Google for Education is the thing that I know, Rick, well, is Google Classroom and all of those Google tools. So that's my quick on that. Thanks.
That's great. If you have any questions for Stacy that didn't get answered, or you're kind of hesitant to ask, you can just email it to me, and then I'll make sure that Stacy gets it, and we'll get you your answers, because that's all great material. So we are looking at about 2:50. So we had said about a 10-minute break. So is everybody okay with, say, 3 o'clock? It pushes us back maybe about 5 minutes on our schedule, but we'll still wrap up before 4 o'clock. So how about a 10-minute break? And we'll return at 3 o'clock. And I think we're good. So welcome back, everyone. We'll now begin our presentation on Jodo Shinshu Essentials to help answer all those oddly difficult questions we often encounter from our inquisitive students and visitors. Again, it's my honor to introduce Rev Henry Adams from the San Mateo Buddhist Temple. Rev Adams has one of those, I wish I could have that experience backgrounds. He grew up in Buffalo, Minnesota. And when I hear Minnesota, I think of cold weather. But I looked it up today. It's a sunny 78 degrees. During a high school exchange program in Chennai, India, he discovered his interest in Buddhism. At St. Olaf's College, he began studying Buddhist scripture, and then on to the University of Michigan for his master's in Buddhist studies. He moved to Miyazaki, Japan, working for the government, then on to Kyoto for ministerial studies at Chuo Bukkyo Gakuin Buddhist Seminary. After graduating in 2010, he began with the BCA in Oxnard, and then San Luis Obispo, and then San Mateo Buddhist Temple since 2013, where he also serves as supervising minister for the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. He also had the opportunity to serve as chaplain intern at the UCSF Med Center. Along with his wife Shoko and sons Yoma, Shoma, and Tokuma, they love bicycling, which means he spends a lot of his free time. Wait, ministers have free time? Okay. Fixing all those bikes. We look forward to your enlightening presentation. And there was no copying, Stacy. I actually had that in my intention to introduce you and Q&A session. So now on to Sensei Adams. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Darlene. I think you're the first person in the history of the world to say you wish you had the experience of growing up in Buffalo, Minnesota. But my hometown neighbors would be proud. It's a very nice place. So thank you all very much. And again, deep gratitude to Stacy for her wonderful presentation that segues us in. I'm, as Darlene kindly introduced me, I'm Reverend Henry Adams. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm honored to be with all of you today to talk about kind of what we call the Jodo Shinshu Essentials. And I thought for my approach today, we would look at this sort of sacred space of the Hondo, particularly talk a little bit about the Onaijin. And these are some things that could also apply to a home of Butsudan, and we can talk more about how we might apply that outside of the temple context later in the Q&A if you like. And also I do happen to have a Kamaboko board of Butsudan here from our collection here at the San Mateo Buddhist Temple. This is a treasure, and it's so we can talk a little bit about how we can utilize some of these objects as well. I'm not a huge person who I don't love to do PowerPoint that much, so I won't be doing PowerPoint today. But because I'm here at the Hondo, I'll try to sort of provide some visuals with the space that we have, and maybe provide an example of how you might be able to utilize spaces, temple spaces, to do programming maybe in a hybrid format where folks could participate in person, but then also some possibilities for joining at home as well. So I am in the San Mateo Hondo, so I have the advantage of our kind of full setup with multiple cameras and so forth. But what I'm doing today could be, in a sense, as easily accomplished with a laptop and a cell phone if positioned, on a table and some boxes. and so forth. So you can get creative with the camera angles. So I'm going to begin by talking about Oshoko, an incense offering. This is one of the first things that a person encounters when they come into our temple. It's the first thing that many of us do when we come into the temple space. And so with the idea that some of us may be brand new Dharma school teachers, maybe folks who didn't grow up in the Jodo Shinshu tradition and aren't entirely familiar with this ritual practice, to kind of walk through how it's done in a kind of traditional way, and then also talk about some of the meaning therein. One of the questions that we received was, is the Japanese cultural flavor of Jodo Shinshu. We chant in Japanese. We do kind of many things that are associated with Japanese culture. One of them being the act of bowing. Is that a kind of liability for us when we have new folks coming in, maybe who don't come from that Japanese cultural background? And so my goal is to talk maybe about how we can convey the meaning that these traditions, which are passed down in our Japanese Jodo Shinshu Buddhist tradition, can have meaning for everyone, and ways in which we can give folks who come into the temple maybe for the first time, or are kind of coming in from without a Buddhist experience, a sense of ownership and meaning, and these can become their own meaningful symbols as well. So I'm going to cross my fingers that all of my technology cooperates, but I'm going to turn on another camera, and I'm going to spotlight that one as well, and talk about incense offering and Oshoko. Okay, so here we are in the Hondo, in the temple space. And again, this way of offering incense can, of course, be done at a temple, but it could also be done at a home or butsudan. So I have these two angles so that you can sort of see from multiple angles how this is done, as we're not able to be together in person. Also, for me, it's important that when I'm sort of presenting something from this space, from the Dharma space, from the Hondo, I always try to have the image of the Buddha in the frame centered as much as possible. So of course, when I was speaking from the chairperson's podium there, that's more of a close-up on my head. But if I'm doing Dharma talks or chanting or something, I always like to have the image of the Buddha here. And I think when we think about offering incense, it's always important to remember that the focus of that is the Buddha. And we'll talk a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about the meaning of that, where we're doing something that's focused to the Buddha, bowing before a statue of the Buddha, and how some folks might react to that as the sense of, oh, we're worshiping the Buddha like a god. Is this God? Is this something sort of outside of myself that I'm doing some kind of an idol worship practice? And I'll explore a little bit of that meaning in a few moments. But first, I'd like to just do a basic introduction to how we offer incense, and as a way that you could think about, maybe this is something that you could do with your Dharma school students. This is one of the first things that Dharma school students learn when they come to the temple. And this is one of those practices that even the preschool kindergarten class can take part in and get some very great meaning from doing. So when we come into the space, to the Hondo, to offer incense, about maybe 2 steps in front of the incense burner, we would put our hands down to the sides and do a slight bow. Some folks may have heard that women should put their hands in their lap when they bow. That isn't, that's a way that women often traditionally bow in formal situations in Japan. The way of offering incense in a Buddhist situation is not, it's not gendered. There's no sort of man's way and women's way of doing these things. But if somebody has a custom they learned from their family of putting their hands in their lap when they do the bow, no need to negate that. And I would sort of just add a footnote, no need to really strongly negate anything that people do, especially if it's something they've learned from their family traditions. You'll see sometimes folks when they offer incense might take the pinch of incense and hold it up to their forehead and then put it on the charcoal. That's not something we do in Jodo Shinshu, but you certainly don't need to tell someone that, oh, that's wrong. You can say, well, that's not required. You don't need to do that, but that's the way that you learn how to do it. That's the way you feel comfortable doing it. Go ahead and continue that. I don't think that Dharma School needs to be in the business of telling people that what their grandmothers used to do was wrong, because a lot of folks, they learn that growing up, and maybe the family in Japan was not from a Jodo Shinshu tradition. Other traditions such as the Tendai tradition, the Nichiren tradition, the Soto Zen tradition do have the custom of receiving the popo, raising it up to the forehead before placing it on the charcoal. So what I'm providing is not intended to be like a corrective to all the wrong things that everyone is out there doing, but rather to provide a kind of a baseline or a guideline for folks who are wondering what is essential, what are the suggested practices for the Jodo Shinshu way of offering. So again, we come about 2 steps ahead, make a slight bow, step forward with the left foot, take a pinch of incense 1 time, place it here on the charcoal, join our hands in Gasho, both hands, and threaded through Yonenju, hands at the center of the chest at about a 45-degree angle here, facing the image of the Buddha. Namam Dabuts, Namam Dabuts, Namam Dabuts, Namam Dabuts. Bow from the waist, head and neck stable. Sometimes you see people bow like that. Usually bow, so your head and neck, this is all a kind of stable line, bowing from the waist. And step back with the right foot, another slight bow, and then return to your seat. Oftentimes, if we come to service, of course, there's a line of folks here to offer incense, especially at the beginning or the end of service, or if you come for a funeral or memorial service. And in that case, it's certainly acceptable as you come forward, same slight bow, step forward, pinch of incense, and then you may step to the right, Namam Dabuts, Namam Dabuts, and bow, back, and bow. Or if there's somebody who's already stepped to the right, you may step to the left, Namam Dabuts, Namam. So the Gasho and Nembutsu doesn't need to be done right here in the center. This is where we would come to offer incense, but if there's a line of people waiting, then you can move to the right or the left side to do the Otoko incense offering that way. So the offering of incense, this is an ancient Buddhist custom, but one need not identify as a Buddhist in order to do it. So a person who comes for the first time says, well, I'm not sure if I'm really a Buddhist. Can I still do this? Yes, of course, everyone is welcome. The offering of incense is our way of showing gratitude for the teachings that we receive. And so the image of the Buddha represents the enlightened, the awakened one. I'm going to talk a little bit more later in detail about kind of some of the representation and the symbolism there. But when we bow to the Buddha, we're bowing to this ideal of enlightenment that we aspire to realize within ourselves. So one way to think about it is that selfish, greedy, angry me is bowing down to the possibility of my own awakening, my own realization of a heart of generosity, a heart of patience, a heart of kindness and compassion for others. And so we come into this space, we hear these teachings, and then we do this practice of offering incense and bowing as a way of showing our gratitude and appreciation for this experience that we have. We each come into the Hondo with our own individual past experiences, our own perspectives, our own journey that's taken us and brought us here to this point. But then when we share in this common ritual, this common movement, we have a kind of togetherness, a connection with one another. And the incense that we offer, each individual incense offering, it comes together to create a shared beautiful aroma that we all are able to appreciate together. So it's a way of really experiencing that harmony of gratitude in the Dharma with multiple senses. And so that's one of the beautiful things about learning in the Hondo, is that we, of course, hear the Dharma, we hear a Dharma talk, we learn through words and kind of discursive thinking, but we also learn through seeing beautiful images, through the smell of the flowers and the incense, the warmth of the candle, the physical activity of doing something together. So for students who have different kind of learning styles and different ways of appreciating, understanding meaning, the experience of offering incense, coming up close where you can see the beautiful imagery, can be a really powerful learning experience, and something that will naturally give rise to lots of questions. So I want to continue by talking about something that's right up here, right up close. And people who come close are going to see something and notice something. You come and stand where I'm standing. So I'm going to show you kind of the view that a person would have when they come up to offer incense. So just one moment, please. Okay, so here I am in the Onaijin of the San Mateo Buddhist Temple. So if you were to come up, or your Dharma School student was to come up to offer incense right here, their view, what they would be looking directly at right here, is the front of this table. And if you are a curious, inquisitive person of any age, but I think about my kids, they would come up and they would immediately start to look at, oh, yes, what do we have? All of that up here. And you see, if you look closely, what do you see? What do you notice? There's 6 panels. And in each of these panels, there is a bird. These birds, these 6 birds, are described in the Amida Sutra. They're the birds of the Pure Land. So if you look in here, we see birds, we see dragons, we see a variety of different types of flowers and other beautiful decorations. And curious people of all ages will wonder, why is that? Why do we have, what's with the birds? Why are the birds there? They're just pretty. And they are pretty, they are beautiful. The Pure Land, again, is the world of the Buddha's enlightenment, described using visual imagery. And yet, there's also meaning behind these birds. So I want to talk about 2 of these birds here as a way of understanding some of the meaning expressed. Let's come closer to this bird here. Can you see what kind of bird this is? Because I can't really read the chat, but this
peacock.
It's a peacock. That's right. Thank you, Stacy. So this bird is a peacock. A peacock is a very very meaningful bird in Buddhism. Peacocks, of course, are beautiful. But do you know what peacocks eat in their natural habitat in India? In the Buddhist tradition, monks in India and these countries where the peacocks naturally live, or the peafowl, is one of our Dharma School students. At one point, I was giving a Dharma talk, and I talked about this peacock, and she raised her hand and said, "Sensei, it's a peafowl. A peacock is the male version, and the sort of gender inclusive is the peafowl. But this one is a peacock. It's a male one. They have this beautiful fan of feathers. And the peacock, their diet includes cobras and scorpions, poisonous snakes, poisonous insects, things that are, strike fear in our hearts. And we think about poison in Buddhism. Poison represents greed, anger, ignorance, right? The three poisons. And so the peacock eats up the poison of the snakes, cobras, scorpions, and the poison does not harm the peacock, but rather it is transformed and it becomes its beautiful self. It takes in that poison and it transforms and becomes beauty inside of the peacock. And so the peacock also, in that sense, it can often be found in Buddhist imagery, and it expresses that meaning that when we come close to the Buddha, the greed, the anger, the ignorance inside of us can be transformed through hearing the Dharma to become generosity, to become compassion, to become wisdom. So, and there's each of these birds has meaning. There's one more I want to talk about here today. That's this one. Your temple name, your temple, if it has a table like this called a Maijoku, it may well have these same 6 birds. It's very quite common in our temple. I'm just going to pause for one moment. Give a little more light. So this bird here, do you notice something about it that's a little bit unusual? This bird. Can you see how many heads it has?
2 heads.
It has 2 heads. That's right. This bird has 2 heads. It's called a Jivam Jivaka. And there's a story that the Buddha told. This is one of the Jataka tales about a Jivam Jivaka bird with 2 heads, Garuda and Upagaruda. Garuda and Upagaruda. And it's said in the story that Garuda and Upagaruda, like all of the Jiva and Jivaka, have 2 heads, but they're never awake at the same time. When one is awake, it's out looking for food. The other one is sleeping. Find something, eat up, maybe find some berries or some delicious leaves and eat those up. And then once it's full and tired, it falls asleep, and the next head wakes up and then off searching for food. Right? So it's said that one day, the head called Garuda found delicious, beautiful, rare flowers, rare, beautiful flower, and it ate it up and it thought, oh, we never know when a predator might come, so I better eat this up quickly so that we'll be able to both enjoy the nourishment of this delicious flower. So ate up the delicious flower and with a nice full belly fell asleep, and then Garuda wakes up and sees this beautiful flower. He recognizes the plant and says, oh, I know that. It's delicious. I wonder if any of those flowers looks, all the flowers are gone. So much looking forward to that delicious flavor. And then looks over at Garuda and sees one of the flower plants hanging out of the side of the feet. Oh, so mad, so angry. Oh, and he's filled with rage. Going out. Finally, he gets tired, falls asleep. Garuda wakes up. This goes on for a while. They go about their life until one day, Garuda is still carrying this rage in his belly. He sees that there's a poisonous plant. He knows, oh, I know that one. I've had a bite of that. That one will give a bad stomach. Because I'll show Garuda. I'm going to eat some of this, show him, give him some pain so that he can get what he deserves for eating up that delicious plant and not sharing it. So Garuda, gobbling up this poisonous plant, and as soon as it starts to go into their stomach, starts these tremendous cramps and pain. And for the first time in their lives, they're both awake at the same moment. It's so painful, no one could be asleep. They're both awake. And Garuda says, what's going on? What happened? Oh, why does our stomach hurt? Garuda said, remember, you ate the delicious flower. You didn't save me any of it. Well, now I've eaten this poisonous plant so that you can suffer. Know how bad I feel. Garuda said, I ate that so that we could both enjoy the nourishment. And now you've caused us such harm that this may be the end of our life. And sure enough, they both died from the poison. The Buddha told this story, and he said that this, in a previous life, I was this bird Garuda, always seeking the path to kindness and goodness for others. But Garuda was my cousin, Devadatta, who's filled with jealousy, and rage, and anger, and holds terrible grudges lifetime after lifetime. And so we see that our lives are connected, and that if we hold on to grudges and rage, it doesn't just harm ourselves, but it harms each other. If we try to cause harm for another, that also will poison ourselves and our own lives. So this beautiful message, this meaning, is expressed here in Yonaiji. All of these items here that express the truth of the Buddha's teaching. And so we can incorporate these into our way of sharing the Dharma. And we have Dharma school students who don't come from a Buddhist background. They can hear this story and they'll remember it. And they'll carry it with them. It will be their story, their meaning. And then that way, then they can come to appreciate this space and all of these things that we do as something that's meaningful for them, regardless of their background. So I know that we're coming to the end of my portion of time. I do want to leave some time for questions and discussion. So I want to now focus in on the Buddha himself, the image of the Buddha. Yeah. So I want to talk about a little bit about the Buddha. I'm going to, forgive me, I'll try not to too abrupt here. So at the center of our temples, we have the image of the Buddha, or some of your temples may have the words Namo Amida Butsu. I'm trying to hold my camera steady so it's not too shaky, but you can see the Buddha. Now I'm going to come a little bit closer here. Closer, that you can actually look at, see the Buddha. So if we look in, we can see our statue of the Buddha. Okay, so what does this statue represent? If you look closely, around the Buddha's head, you can see there are spikes, there are bars, golden bars that are coming off in every direction from the Buddha's head. Those represent the 48 vows of Dhammapada Bodhisattva, or Amida Buddha, all of the different aspects of the Buddha's wisdom and compassion that are expressed there. And you can see they go off in all directions. If you have a painted image of the Buddha, you'll notice that there are also 48 rays that are painted. It's usually blue, they're gold rays on a blue background, and they go off right to the edge of the page, representing that the Buddha's wisdom shines in all directions to the very ends of all space and into the most dark points of our hearts and our mind. You'll also notice the Buddha's hands are doing a kind of one hand, so from where you're viewing, the left hand, it's the Buddha's right hand, but the left hand is up in kind of an okay sign, and the Buddha's left hand, which would be on the right, is making that same gesture, but in a downward direction. So the hand going up, that's sort of like an okay sign, right? It represents the removing of fear. So you see the Buddha making this gesture, letting us know that difficulties, challenges in our lives, this is a natural part of life. We don't need to be afraid. We can face things with peace of mind, and living with peace of mind can give us great strength. And then the other hand, which is facing downward, the Buddha's left hand, that's the gesture of fulfilling vows, of helping. So you can think of it as someone like reaching down to help someone. So this is the presence of the Buddha in our lives. The Buddha's wisdom shining in all directions, wherever we're at, that wisdom can be with us, guiding us, removing our fear, and recognizing our suffering, and helping to lift us up into a life of wisdom and kindness. So I want to now, something that you may not often get to see, but you can talk to your Dharma School students about this. And if you have a temple like ours, where you can kind of come into view from the side, you can see if you look from the side at the image of the Buddha here, you can see that the Buddha is actually not standing straight up. The Buddha is tilting forward. So the Buddha is tilting forward. And so that represents that the Buddha is coming forth into our lives. So our Buddha statue, Amida Buddha, isn't sitting on a chair or on a stool, but rather is standing up, active, coming forth into our lives. And that expresses the truth of the Nembutsu teaching that Namo Amida Butsu is something we carry with us wherever we go in our lives, and that the Buddha can support and guide us, whatever we are, whatever we're doing, and is an active presence in our life, coming forth, bringing wisdom of enlightenment into our lives. And so, so this is a little way to talk about Amida Buddha and to help Dharma School students relate to this space and the meaning that is conveyed in this space. So I'm going to stop this camera now. Okay. And I'll just head back over to the podium and we can discuss any questions that you may have at this point.
So while Reverend Adams is moving back to the podium, we have Stacy Uyeda who will moderate this portion. And then we have Mas Nishimura and Yuko Suruki who will be monitoring the chat. So you can either raise your hand and Stacy will call on you, or if you prefer to put your question in the chat, we have monitors that will bring those questions forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Gotta find my camera. Okay, there I am. Okay,
Great.
so thank you all very much. Let's see. I can see this. I can see the chat here. Has anyone created a survey for parents who might not have many experiences with Jodo Shinshu practices? I'm starting to think that the parents don't come because they themselves are not comfortable. So is this Jeannie, so your sense is that parents are dropping off the kids and not sticking around, or they're just not bringing the kids in the first place?
Most of them don't bring their kids. If we have any kids, they come with grandparents.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of my own kids who I bring my grandkids, and I know my daughter-in-law is not comfortable because she didn't grow up Jodo Shinshu. Mm-hmm. And so I never even thought about that part. I just, bring the kids. But since we're having trouble getting new people in, I'm wondering if maybe my first step would be, again, what I heard other temples doing and having families come and get comfortable first before we start really doing Sunday school. Because, a lot of us talked about how a lot of us grew up just hearing parables. And that's why I think I loved hearing your stories about the birds. I think that's how I learned. If I learned anything about Buddhism or being Buddhist, it was from the parables. That was the only Sunday school that I really remember. But yeah, so now I'm thinking in terms of, it's not just the kids will come, but they can't drive. So I really have to do something to get the parents to come and feel comfortable, because I can't even get them to come volunteer many times.
Yeah. Yes, I think yes, and I think that's a good point. And I think that we also struggle with a sense that folks will wish to provide their children with some sort of, there's a sense that even in this day and age, that people feel like the children should have some exposure to spiritual or religious traditions, but that they're at a point in their lives where they don't really need that. It's the kids should have some exposure to this, but I've already kind of figured out and come to my own understandings and so forth. And I think it's important, it's wonderful if we can offer opportunities for the whole family to learn. And I think having something going simultaneously with the Dharma School session. So many of our temples have they have a Dharma School service, and then maybe they'll have or the main service includes the Dharma School message. And the Dharma School students are there after service, but the parents might just be kind of hanging around. But if we can provide opportunities for them, maybe like an adult Dharma School session or Dharma discussion. I know many of our temples have these things, but to sort of invite folks to come, it's like, well, if you're hanging around, why don't you, come join us for this conversation? And that may be a way to give the parents a chance to kind of talk about the things that are on their mind and how Buddhism might the teachings of the Buddha might relate to those. But that's a great question. I think if the parents are not on board, then it can be hard for the kids to be able to continue with it. Although we do have some cases, I know some folks on the call right now, it was their kids who actually, were having a great experience at Dharma School, and they kept, wanting to come, and that inspired the parents to come and get involved too.
Oh, thank you, Sensei, and thank you, Jeannie, for that really helpful, thoughtful question. And it's something all the temples are really dealing with. I want Sensei just to put forth a couple of questions that were offered during registration.
Yeah.
And they're kind of related in that they're sort of more, always thought, just people afraid to ask, but I think wonder a lot about these things. So one is what goes to the Pure Land if there is no self? And two, do Buddhists pray?
Okay. Yeah. So let's see. Maybe I'll start with the second one, because that one's a little bit easier. Buddhists in general definitely pray. I think, when I remember, this was years ago when I first started out as a minister, I remember meeting a Vietnamese Buddhist woman at there's a couple of Buddhist groups. This is when I was serving in Oxnard, and there was a couple of Buddhist groups in Oxnard and Ventura who would do some charitable activities, breakfast for the homeless and so forth. And I remember a young woman who I was working with, and we're just sort of introducing ourselves, and she says, "Oh, you're Buddhist, so do you pray like us?" And her association with Buddhism and Buddhist practice was to do what she called praying, and what I think would be fairly could fall easily under an umbrella kind of definition of praying, of coming into a Buddhist space with a wish in one's heart, maybe a wish for the well-being of a loved one, or for the well-being of the family, or for a sense of safety and security, and that a feeling that coming into doing a Buddhist practice would create some good karmic energy that could help to bring that about. So that is something that is done by Buddhists. And so in the Jodo Shinshu tradition, we as individuals don't have that idea that I will do something that will create this good karma, this karmic merit that I'll then be able to direct on to someone else or receive the benefit of myself, because we have a sense that anything that I could do, that I could accomplish as an individual, is so minuscule compared to the tremendous karmic merit created by the Buddha and directed toward me. So you may have heard of D.T. Suzuki. He is kind of a famous writer on Buddhism in English. He was one of the first to really do a lot of writing in English in kind of the early and mid 20th century. And he translated Shinran Shonin's Kyogyo Shinsho, and he translated the Hongan, which we call the primal vow, as the original prayer. original prayer of Amida Buddha. And I think of that as a very, very interesting translation, because it conveys the sense that the Buddha had this wish to create a good merit and to direct that toward us. And so we think of ourselves as the recipient of that good energy, but not as people who are in a position to kind of create that. So for us as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, we don't do that kind of praying as withholding a wish for my, to create some benefit for myself or for my family. But Shinran Shonin said that people who say the Nembutsu should do so with this wish that may the world be at peace, and may the Buddha's teachings spread. May peace prevail throughout the world, and may the Buddha's teachings spread. So that's a kind of wish that we carry in our hearts in the Nembutsu. So, I think if you really want to sort of, we have a tendency to wish to kind of push away from Christian language and things from the non-Buddhist traditions that we identify with Christianity. And so we say, oh, we're not Christian, we don't pray. But if we take a more broader kind of inclusive view, we could say that that maybe the feeling in the heart of a sincere prayer could be present in the heart of a Buddhist, and even in a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist as well. Then the next question, if there's no self, then what goes to the Pure Land? Was that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Tanluan, one of our seven masters, he kind of addressed this. So this was, over 1,500 years ago or so. This question was already out there, and people were asking, okay, so if you Buddhists don't believe in the self, why do you talk about birth in the Pure Land? And Tanluan said there are two ways of thinking about the self. One is a usual everyday way of the self, where it's like, I'm me, I have, my own identity that's separate from everyone else. And in the Buddhist tradition, yes, that is an illusion. The idea that I exist somehow separate from all other living beings in any way that's just a delusion. That our lives are so deeply interconnected that if we really get right down to it, there is nothing that we could call a permanent, unchanging self. So that's one way of talking about the self. And Tanluan says there's another sense of the self as a flow of causes and conditions throughout the past, that there's a continuity moment to moment from my past experiences, even going beyond one lifetime to the next, that there is this continuity, this thread of experience that runs through my life. And that thread is what we talk about when we talk about birth in the Pure Land, that one moment follows the next, and the moment of death is followed by the moment of birth in the Pure Land of Amida Buddha. So that is the sense in which we could think about that's that thread continues, that sort of river continues to flow into the great ocean, but there's not like a permanent me that's in there somewhere.
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
There's one question also offered during registration was, why is it important to tell our Dharma School children to carry our onenju in the left hand? And asking for an answer or a response that the youngest children can understand.
Right. That's a great question. So the nenju is traditionally, that's right, is carried in the left hand. And when we get into things like, why does a nenju have 108 beads or a traditional strand and so forth, we don't have like the words of Shinran Shonin that tell us why is the nenju carried in the left hand. And so our way of approaching this is to think about the meaning of why it is that we carry the Onenju. And Nenyo Shonin, he said that it's very important to carry the Onenju. He says, doing a service without the Onenju is like grasping the Buddha with your bare hands. It's a really, really kind of a powerful expression. But if you think about in traditional Buddhist thinking, the body is sort of divided left and right in terms of the left side sort of representing the side of impurity and the right side representing the side of purity. And so there's a sense, like if you look at the robes that ministers wear for the services, the formal Gojo Gesa robe, always the strap goes over the left side. And then also the right side is the side that's always faced the Buddha when you walk around, when people circumambulate the Buddha statue. And so the left side represents our own greed, anger, ignorance, our delusions. And so that's the side that really needs the attention of the Buddha, right? And so we could think about it in that sense, that to bring the mindfulness of the Buddha's wisdom and compassion to our moments of greed, anger, and ignorance. It's the time we're really, really kind of raging about something. That's the moment when we need that attention of the Buddha. Right? And so that's one way to kind of think about that we carry it in the left hand as a way of sort of bringing that attention. The other side, there's also a very practical side, whereas if you're always supposed to carry the Nenju with you, and most people are right-handed, especially in East Asia, there was a sense where people were traditionally, everyone wrote with the right hand. Whether you were born right-handed or not, you wrote with your right hand. And so carrying the Nenju in the left hand enables you to hold on to it while you're doing all of your other activities of daily life. Yeah. So there's a kind of practical side to it too. Yeah.
That's very consistent with anthropologists have studied about left and right-handedness. But I would say not to overstate that with students, because a lot of students are left-handed, and it's not to make them feel bad like that you're left-handed.
Yeah, my second son is left-handed. And
exactly.
It's like, right. And I don't, I wouldn't, I mean, that's not something I've ever told a group of Dharma School students, or not, not to frame it, but yeah. So you need to, as Stacy's demonstrating, sort of, use your own good judgment too. But, okay.
Okay, thank you, Sensei. So before we move on to a new question, just wanted to follow up that there are two comments from Joanne and Norman, just still musing and thinking about Jeannie's really important and complicated question. Joanne just said that that they've talked about this in Canada at the Toronto Temple. They're going to start trying a family Dharma club where families can learn together, right? Which is really, that sounds like a wonderful idea. And Norman from San Diego says, people seem very quick to drop off their recently passed parents' obutsudan. And I get the feeling that the other family members see it as something ancient with no meaning, which is interesting. And I am the recipient, for instance, of my grandma's, because my stepmother doesn't want it, the big obutsudan, my grandmother's obutsudan. So that's an interesting question and comment. Let's see. Reverend Adams, there's a couple more questions from the registration. And wow, they're deep. I'll just read two of them. It says, isn't karma fate or predetermined by the Buddha?
Okay, I can try to answer that one.
Okay.
So the word karma means action, and it's a sense that the things that there are three types of karma. There are things that we physically do, things that we say, and things that we think. So these are kind of the three broad strokes, ways of understanding activity and action in Buddhism. And so based on your actions, your words, and your thoughts, that creates a kind of momentum in your life. The kind of things you do, the things you say, the way you think, it sort of propels you through life. And it determines two things about your life: what kind of person you are, kind of person you become, and then what kind of environment you live in. These are determined by your past actions, words, and thoughts. They create the circumstances of your present life, and the way you're living today will determine the circumstances of your future life. And so if I think about like fate and destiny and things like that, I think the way that we often understand these things in our contemporary society is that you don't have any control over it. And that is not the nature of karma. The nature of karma is that you do, in a sense, have very much control, or you did at some point have control over what you did in the past that's brought you into this situation. And there's always a possibility of redirecting. You're in your situation. You've committed a crime. You've been arrested and tried and convicted, and you're in jail. Well, a change of heart isn't going to break you out of jail, but it's going to change the direction of your life from that moment forth. The great karmic act from a Buddhist Jodo Shinshu perspective is to entrust in Amida Buddha, and then having that trust in the Buddha, that is the path to liberation. And that will redirect your life. So a person who has that settled mind their way of acting and speaking and thinking, that'll be reflected in their activities. And then Daniel talks about that when he talks about the ninju. He says people who have this settled mind, you'll notice they're carrying a ninju. It becomes evident in a person's way of living.
Mm.
So,
wow. Thank you so much, Reverend Adams. I'm sure we're all learning so much. I'm personally learning so much. Do we have time for one more question, Carl and Darlene? Yeah. This one's would be really cool if you're able, Reverend Adams. There are these videos, these YouTube videos that I've seen before where someone is given a question or a concept and they kind of try to explain it at different levels. And I'm almost wondering if you might try to do that a little bit, like maybe give us what might you say to the younger elementary school students, and maybe what might you say to middle school or high school students to the question, how do we explain or describe Amida Buddha?
Yeah. Sorry. So for the youngest ones, I would sort of think about our traditional way of talking about Amida Buddha as the loving parent, and that doesn't necessarily need to be a biological parent, but think about somebody who really cares about you in your life, who from the way that they live, that they care about you. Could be your dad or your mom, could be your grandma, it could be, someone else, a friend, a teacher. That kind of caring about you, that's how the Buddha, Amida Buddha, feels about you, about all beings, about everybody. And it's not just you, but it's everybody, even the people who are really difficult and hard to get along with. The Buddha has that kind of kindness for everybody. And so there's somebody, for everybody in the world, there's somebody who has that kind of care and love for that person. And so, and that's what I would maybe say to my own very young children. And then as you get into, so now I'm just thinking about my own kids. I have a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and an 11-year-old. And then if I was, and then if I was thinking about maybe, the sort of the next level of, of maturity or understanding, that I don't know that the answer would be that different for any of the levels, but I think the question is then, how do you respond to the questions that would maybe come up from that? So I think about my 8-year-old son. He recently asked me, what is the difference between Shakyamuni Buddha and Amida Buddha? He's sort of ready for that question. And then to him, I would say, well, Shakyamuni Buddha was a person who lived in this world like you and me. He was a historical figure, somebody who actually was walking around, and there are places in India where you can go to visit Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha, he taught the truth using many different kinds of methods and stories. He would tell stories that express the meaning of truth, just like you read stories that express some meaning. And they may not be historical stories, but there's something in those stories that tell you something that is real, that feels real in your life. And so Amida Buddha is the Shakyamuni Buddha. He told us that story about Amida Buddha to express that meaning of enlightenment. Yeah. And then, I think about my oldest son. My oldest son's at a point where, he would start asking me like, so did Shakyamuni Buddha, did he, are these words that actually came out of his mouth? Did he actually tell these words of the sutra? And, we can talk about the sutras with him. I can talk about, talk about what a sutra is. It's something that is different from a newspaper article. It's different from a history book. It conveys a kind of meaning that goes beyond the specifics of this mundane world and points us to a larger and deeper truth, like the finger pointing to the moon. The sutras are that finger that's directing us toward enlightenment, toward awakening. And once we've sort of become clear about that direction, had some sense of that direction, we don't need to cling on to the literal words. We keep returning to that finger. We chant the sutras over and over, but the important matter is the direction that they tell us, and not the actual the literal words of those sutras. And so Amida Buddha is that direction of enlightenment, the language that we use to talk about the truth.
Thank you so much. I know it is 4:00. There is one more question that was submitted through registration. Darlene and Carl, is it okay to ask the last question?
I say sure, why not?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Adams. This is the last question. I was blown away by this question. It's very interesting. The question is, does Jodo Shinshu Buddhism require me to think individually or as a group?
Interesting. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. Jodo Shinshu Buddhism doesn't require you to do anything, I think, but I'm not going to totally sidestep the question. But I see the kind of the point, what's being asked here, and I think that both are necessary. So there's kind of two aspects to to the Jodo Shinshu kind of perspective. And one aspect is the sense of the self-reflection, this looking inward and becoming aware of my own greed, anger, and ignorance. But how that plays out and impacts the lives of other people. So we need to think for ourselves. We need to have deep self-awareness of what's going on in our own minds, but with understanding and appreciation for how that is impacting other people. And so when we make decisions, I think guided by, for me, in my sense of decision making, guided by the wisdom of the Nembutsu tradition, would be to make decisions for myself, but with an understanding of how the results of those actions are going to impact others. So the awareness, Shindan Shonin says that the signs of long years of saying the Nembutsu and aspiring for birth in the Pure Land are shown in deep warmth and concern for fellow practitioners. So this deepened self-awareness expresses itself as thinking about other people and having concern for other people. So there's kind of both aspects of that making decisions for oneself, but also thinking about other people and having concern for other people. But the teachings are very clear. You got to figure it out for yourself. It has to be settled, your own settled mind. I mean, the writings of Shindan, the Buddha himself, Denyo Shonin in particular, really emphasize that you can't just hear it and parrot it from someone else. You really need to have a sense of how this teaching applies to your own life.
Thank you so much, Reverend Adams. Really appreciate it. And I learned so much. I just took so many notes.
Thank you for moderating.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll just pass it back to Darlene and Carl.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Stacy and Reverend Adams. And I'm waiting for the recording because I couldn't write fast enough. So I have ideas, but I want to clarify that I wrote down the right answer. So because we're going to use the theme of going green. We're going to use that next year. And I think just about everything we touched on today applies to that for all our grade levels. So thank you very much. And then Masa Yuko behind the scenes also, thank you. We had great questions submitted, as well as good questions coming out of our audience, but I put in the chat, if there was something you just didn't get a chance to ask or want an answer to, please email it to me, and then I will make sure that it gets to the proper party. So this concludes today's workshop. Can we have Reverend Adams, can you lead us in Gassho before we remove you from the box?
Certainly. Oh, let me pick another camera. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda.
Again, thank you all for participating today. And I know it takes time out of our very busy schedules. And remember, once we get this edited, we will post it on the FDSTL website. You have access to Stacy's wonderful documents, and we will make sure that it all gets emailed to you as well with the links. So there was also, don't forget, during this particular school year, that to offer the My Offerings, because the My Offerings and the support we get from FBWA do help us put on educational programs. So please consider those as you go through your yearly tasks. And then, I'd like to really recognize this committee because you have a very hardworking Buddhist education committee that we really don't hear too much about committees. We see what they do, we see the end product, but we really don't see what goes on behind the scenes. So a great shout out to our ministerial advisor, who is Rev Henry Adams. And then our lead for several years, who has huge shoes to fill, is Carl Yanati. And our team of great, I call them our team of great minds. So that's Debbie Inanaga, who could not join us today, Mash Nishimura, Rick Oishi, Koichi Sayano, who's I don't think really a member of the committee, but he is a member of the committee. Nanayo Silver, Yuko Suruki, and Stacy Uyeda. So we hope to continue to serve all our teachers in a valued capacity. So please send those suggestions, or if you would like to become a part of this committee or any other FDSTL committee, please email me and I will make sure your emails get forwarded to the most appropriate person. We're always looking for new ideas and new people, so don't hesitate. There is nothing that says you have to have this bar of experience to be qualified. No. New ideas are wonderful. So please sign up and let me know what committee you were interested in or what area of FDSTL, and we'll sure to get you in touch with those people. So again, thank you very much to everybody that helped out. Carl was our technician aficionado here today, so thanks, Carl. And if the committee can remain behind so we could discuss a little bit. Otherwise, we thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thank you.